Have you ever wondered what one piece of wisdom could completely transform a man's life, a woman's life, or even the destiny of an entire generation? What if I told you that today, in these next few moments, you could hear something so simple, yet so powerful, that it might change the way you look at strength, masculinity, and what it truly means to live well? Stay with me, because this isn't just a lesson, it's a legacy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. What I'm about to share doesn't come from the loud stages of influencers or the bright lights of celebrities. It comes from a quiet corner of wisdom, forged through 9 decades of life, lived with courage and humility. It came from a woman, 92 years old, whose eyes had witnessed both the darkness of war and the beauty of peace, who had held heartbreak in her hands and yet kept choosing love. She had buried children she once rocked to sleep, raised others with all she had left, and served her neighbors until her hands were too weak to even lift a broom. When I sat with her, I asked the question that had been burning in my heart. What would you say to young men today? She looked at me, eyes lined with time, yet shining with a fierce light, and said 5 things. 5 truths. And I'll tell you, now these are truths many men will live their entire lives without ever truly knowing. But if they did, everything would change. She began with the first truth, and it hit me like a thunderclap. A man is not made by his strength, but by his surrender. That might sound upside down in a world like ours, where toughness is a badge of honor, where loud confidence is celebrated, and where young men are taught to never bend, never break, and definitely never show weakness. But let me tell you something. When a 92-year-old grandmother with nothing left to prove looks you in the eyes and says, "Strength isn't always what you think it is," you listen. She told me stories I'll never forget, son. I've seen men lift boulders with their backs and lose their families because they couldn't say, "I was wrong." I've seen men who could fight 5 others and win, but they couldn't fight the pride inside themselves. And then she leaned in and said words I'll carry for the rest of my life. Don't tell me about strong men. Show me a surrendered man. In that moment, something in me shifted. Because real strength, the kind that doesn't crumble when the storms come, isn't in the size of a man's muscles or the loudness of his voice. It's found in the quiet hidden moments when he chooses to bow his heart. Not bowing to the world's demands, not bowing to another man's opinions, but bowing before God, admitting his need, surrendering his pride, and laying down his illusions of control. Because here's a truth you won't hear from the world. A man who won't kneel is a man who will fall. But a man who humbles himself before the Lord is standing on a rock that cannot be shaken, no matter how fierce the winds or how high the waves. You see, the world teaches our young men to fight for control, to prove themselves, to grind until there's nothing left. We hand them slogans like "no pain, no gain," and "man up," but we never show them how to truly find peace. And where does all of that lead? Burnout, anxiety, men who build an empire on the outside but feel empty and lost on the inside. Men who lose marriages, alienate their children, and find themselves alone at the end of a long race they thought they had to run alone. But what if strength was never meant to look like that? What if the strongest thing a man could ever do was to admit he can't carry it all alone? What if true manhood isn't measured by how much you can control, but by how much you can surrender? Because surrender doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. It makes you grounded. It makes you real. And so, my friends, as we begin this journey together today, let me ask you, have you bought into the lie that real men never bow? Have you believed that surrender is for the weak? Because if you have, I invite you to listen closely. Lean in. Because the greatest men the world has ever known, men who shaped history, healed nations, saved families, were never too proud to kneel before God. That's the kind of strength this world desperately needs. And that's the kind of man you were made to become. You see, you can win every argument close, every deal, charm, every room, and still lay your head down at night without peace in your soul. You can carry the whole world on your shoulders, walk around like you've got it all figured out, and yet be crushed under the invisible weight of your own pride. But here's the truth. No one tells you the man who surrenders to God finds a strength. No storm can shake. No failure can break. No enemy can steal. Because when you kneel before the one who made you, you rise with a power deeper than your muscles, richer than your bank account, stronger than your reputation. A surrendered man learns to walk with grace. He knows that not every hill is worth dying on. Not every fight needs his fists. Not every challenge is his to conquer alone. He doesn't need to puff out his chest to feel like he matters. He doesn't need the empty applause of a crowd when he's already heard the quiet, unchanging voice of heaven whispering, "You are mine." I'll never forget what that grandmother told me, her eyes wet with memory. The greatest strength I ever saw was in your grandfather. The day he fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face, confessing his sins to God. He didn't point fingers at anyone else. He didn't hide behind excuses. He let himself break, and in that breaking, God rebuilt him stronger than I'd ever seen. That's the kind of man this world needs more of. Not men who think tears are weakness, but men who know repentance is power. Not men who wear masks of perfection, but men who walk honestly, clothed in grace. Because surrender does something radical. It softens the hard heart. It clears the clutter in a crowded mind. It sharpens your purpose. When a man lays down his pride, he picks up peace. When he stops trying to control everything, he finally sees clearly. When he trusts God more than he trusts himself, his life stops swaying with every storm. His choices become wiser. His strength roots itself deeper than anything you could build in a gym. So let me say this to every young man listening right now. If you want to be truly strong, not just strong in arms, but strong in heart, strong in purpose, strong in character, then learn how to surrender. Not to fear, not to weakness, but to the God who made you. Lay it all down, the anger that poisons you, the image you're desperate to maintain, the restless need to prove yourself to everyone watching. Because real men don't just lift heavy weights, they lift their hands in surrender and say, "I can't do this alone." And when you do that, heaven leans in and says, "Now there's a man I can use." That's the truth. Few men discover it. But those who do, they don't just change their own lives, they change the world. And then she shared the second truth, one that hit me just as hard. If you want a good wife, be a good husband first. She said it with a steady calm. 92 years of wisdom distilled into a single sentence. She didn't hesitate or flinch because she knew it was true. Too many boys become men with a checklist for the perfect woman, beautiful, loyal, kind, supportive, but they never stop to look in the mirror and ask what kind of man they themselves have become. We live in a world where men are taught to seek the ideal wife, but almost never taught how to become the kind of husband that woman would ever want to build a life with. And what's worse, some men think that once they put a ring on her finger, they've crossed the finish line, checked the box, and can stop trying. But marriage isn't a trophy to display. It's a field you tend a garden. You water a commitment you renew every single day. You want a woman who respects you, then live respectably. Don't demand honor while living dishonorably. You want a woman who's patient with your flaws, then be humble enough to admit you have them and be willing to grow. You want love, grace, and affection. Then plant those seeds every day because you cannot harvest what you never sow. Love can't be demanded like a debt. It must be given freely, nurtured faithfully, and protected fiercely. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, The best husbands I've seen in my life weren't the loudest ones. They weren't the men who bragged about their strength or who tried to dominate every conversation. They were the quiet warriors, the men who showed up, who listened, who prayed with their wives when times were hard, who held their families together with quiet faithfulness, not flashy words. And isn't that what real strength looks like? A man who knows the power of his words, the weight of his actions, the responsibility of his love. A man who's not afraid to ask for forgiveness when he's wrong, who doesn't use silence as a punishment or harsh words as a weapon. A man who protects his home not just from intruders at the door, but from bitterness, neglect, and selfishness inside the walls. So if you're a man who wants to find a wife worthy of respect, start by becoming a man who lives with integrity. If you're already married and you feel things slipping, don't blame her for everything. Start with you. Humble yourself. Pray over her. Speak life into her heart. Remember, marriage isn't about having the upper hand. It's about holding each other's hands as you walk through life together. And if you're still single, don't waste this time chasing every thrill. Use it to become the kind of man who's ready to love with strength, patience, and grace. Because one day when you stand before a woman you love, your words won't matter nearly as much as the man you've become when no one was watching. They weren't the men making loud rules or barking commands. They were the quiet giants who got up early in the morning, slipped out of bed, and prayed for their wives before she even opened her eyes. They were the men who stayed in the kitchen, after dinner, rolled up their sleeves and washed the dishes, not because anyone asked, but because they understood that service is love in action. They were the ones who guarded her heart, not just her body, who made her feel safe emotionally, spiritually, and physically. That's a man. That's a husband. The world shouts that you must lead your home by power, by dominance, by force. But God whispers a better way: lead your home by example, by humility, by love. And let's make this perfectly clear. Headship in a marriage is not dictatorship. Being the head of your home doesn't mean ruling with an iron fist or demanding blind obedience. A true husband doesn't lead with fear. He leads with sacrificial love, the kind of love that listens more than it talks, that gives more than it takes, that chooses faithfulness even when it would be easier to slip away unnoticed. Because love, real love, is not loud. It's not flashy or dramatic. Love is quiet and constant. Love is a choice you make over and over again. It's taking out the trash when you're exhausted after a long day. It's turning off your phone, locking eyes with your wife, and really hearing what's on her heart. It's forgiving her in your thoughts before she even has a chance to say, "I'm sorry." It's keeping your promises even when every part of you wants to give up or walk away. Trust is not built in grand sweeping gestures or eloquent speeches. Trust is built in the small, quiet, everyday moments, in the consistent faithfulness that proves your word means something. That old woman leaned back in her chair, eyes filled with stories of years gone by, and said, "You want to know why so many marriages are falling apart these days? It's not because people changed overnight. It's because men stopped showing up. Not just in their bodies, but in their hearts, minds, and spirits." She spoke the hard truth. So many men are physically present, sitting at the dinner table or lying in bed beside their wives, but they're absent in every other way that matters. They're not connected. They're not engaged. They're not fighting for their marriages or their families. And let's be real, some of you listening right now grew up in homes where you never saw what a true husband looked like. You saw men who disappeared when things got tough, who lashed out in anger, who left wounds instead of love. You witnessed abandonment and rage, but you don't have to repeat that cycle. You have a choice. You can be the man who stays when it's hard, the man who protects when it's dangerous, the man who prays when it feels hopeless, the man whose very presence brings peace to his wife's heart instead of anxiety. You can be the man who makes his wife feel safer when he walks into the room, not more afraid. Do you want a good wife? Then start today by becoming the kind of man worthy of her trust, her vulnerability, her dreams, and her future. And hear me, you don't become that man by sweet talk or empty promises. You become him through daily acts of love, moments of integrity, and quiet sacrifices that say, I choose you every day. The old woman looked at me with eyes like warm steel, strong but soft with kindness, and said, a good man makes a good marriage. That's the plain truth. She didn't have to shout it. Her words carried the weight of decades of moments lived and lessons learned. Then she leaned in and said something that pierced right through me. Son, I've seen men lose everything, not because they were evil, but because they never learned to control their tongue. And isn't that the truth we see playing out every day? Some men have muscles that could move mountains, but words like knives that leave scars. They speak without thinking, they shout without listening, and they curse when they should be comforting. But a real man, a wise man knows, his words are not just sounds floating in the air. They are seeds planted in the hearts of those he loves. Every word you speak grows into something. Words of anger can grow into fear and resentment. Words of encouragement can grow into confidence and peace. Words of harshness can crush a spirit. Words of kindness can heal a wound no one else could see. So, men, if you want to lead your home, well, start with your words. Choose them carefully. Speak life over your wife. Build her up with your tongue instead of tearing her down. Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and even slower to anger. Because what you plant with your words today will shape the marriage you wake up to tomorrow. Love bitterness, healing wounds in every moment with every word you get to choose what grows in the hearts of those around you. That old woman leaned in close as if she was sharing a secret too important to whisper. She told me how her father was a quiet man, but his words carried the weight of mountains. He didn't talk much, she said, eyes shining with memories, but when he spoke, everyone listened. It wasn't because he raised his voice or demanded attention. It was because his words were true, measured, and full of life. Look around today, and you'll see a world drowning in noise. Everyone has something to say. Social media feeds are packed with shouting, arguing, debating, mocking, a constant stream of words with little wisdom behind them. But what's rare now and more powerful than ever is a man who knows the difference between when to speak and when to stay silent. A man who can use his words like a balm instead of a blade, who understands that what he says can either start fires or soothe wounds. Gentleness, she reminded me, is not weakness. That's where so many men and the world at large get it wrong. Gentleness is strength, harnessed, controlled, and directed toward love. Gentleness is a fire that warms the cold, not a wildfire that scorches everything in its path. It's like a river that flows steady and deep, nourishing life wherever it goes, not a raging flood that destroys everything in its wake. A man who learns to guard his tongue will protect not only his own life, but also the hearts of his wife, his children, his friends. He will build a legacy of trust instead of fear. She looked me in the eye wrinkles of wisdom framing her face and said, I was married 60 years. You know what kept us together. She paused, letting the question hang in the air. It wasn't the good times. Anyone can smile when the sun is shining. It was the words we chose during the storms. She explained that when tension is high and patience is wearing thin, that's the true test of a man's character. Those moments reveal everything. When you're frustrated, angry, or exhausted, your words can either tear a woman's heart to shreds or lift her spirit above the storm. They can either create children who grow up in fear, always waiting for the next outburst, or children who know they are loved, safe, and seen. Too many men today hide their anger behind sarcasm, using humor as a shield to wound those closest to them. They use silence as a weapon, withdrawing their words to punish instead of communicating to heal. That's not strength. That's avoidance. That's immaturity dressed up in the armor of pride. And make no mistake, what you refuse to say still speaks volumes. Silence can wound just as deeply as sharp words. A real man, a wise man knows words are like seeds. He uses his words to build what matters most. He speaks life into his marriage when others sow criticism. He encourages his brothers when others only compete. He corrects his children with kindness, not harshness, teaching them with love rather than scaring them into obedience. He listens more than he talks because he understands that understanding comes before advice. He doesn't need to win every argument or have the last word because his confidence comes from standing on truth, not from proving himself right. She took a deep breath, her voice lowering with gravity, as she said, "Son, some of the most dangerous things a man can carry aren't in his hands. They're in his mouth." Those words hit me like a lightning bolt because they're true, and maybe they need to hit more of us today. We forget how powerful words really are. The Bible says plainly, the tongue has the power of life and death. That's not just a poetic metaphor. It's a divine warning that what we say can build or destroy, heal or harm. Every careless word can plant seeds of bitterness that take years to uproot. Every gentle word can plant seeds of love that bloom for generations. Your words can speak death over your marriage, poison your children's hearts, or crush your own dreams before they even start. Or your words can speak life, faith, courage, hope, and truth into the people you love most. So the next time you feel the urge to lash out, to belittle, to prove your point at any cost, stop and ask yourself, am I building something that will last? Or am I tearing down what I was created to protect? Because what you build with your words today will become the foundation of your family's future tomorrow. Few men understand the quiet hidden power of a gentle word, but the ones who do, their homes are filled with peace, not tension. Their children grow up confident, knowing they are loved unconditionally. Their wives sleep easier at night, knowing their hearts are safe with a man who guards his words like precious treasure. And that, my friends, is the kind of man who changes not just his home, but the world around him. Not because life is perfect, not because everything goes according to plan, but because these men have learned the quiet strength of using their words and their presence to calm the storm instead of causing it. Hard times aren't a possibility, they're a certainty. That's not a threat or a scare tactic. It's a promise carved into the very nature of life itself. And what you do in those dark moments when your best-laid plans crumble, when your health takes a turn you didn't see coming, when your finances evaporate, when the friends you trusted most disappear without a word, that's when the real you steps into the light. That's when what's truly inside a man is revealed for everyone and for himself to see. That old woman leaned back in her chair as if she'd settled into memories too deep for words, hands folded gently in her lap, eyes clouded with both sorrow and wisdom. It was clear she'd seen storms that could have broken her many times over, yet there she sat, strong, steady, unshaken. "Pain," she said quietly, "will knock on your door whether you're ready or not. And it never bothers to ask your permission before barging right in and making itself at home." But then she said the words that cut to my soul. "You don't get to choose your trials, but you do get to choose your response." That truth echoed like thunder. Some men fall apart the moment pressure hits. They lash out in anger. They numb themselves with addictions or distractions. They flee from responsibility, as if running will solve the storm. But there are other men, rare men who dig deeper when the earth beneath them gives way. They don't pretend the pain doesn't exist. They don't fake a smile or wear a mask of false strength, but they refuse to let that pain poison their hearts with bitterness. They allow it to teach them, to humble them, to make them better instead of harder. You see, a man's true character isn't revealed when the sun is shining and the birds are singing. Anybody can look wise when life is easy. Even a coward can appear brave when there's no battle to fight. But let the bottom fall out, let the storm rage, and then you'll see what a man is really made of. When everything falls apart, do you curse the heavens or cry out in prayer? Do you run from the fight or fall to your knees seeking strength beyond yourself? Do you break the people around you in your frustration, or let God break you in a way that rebuilds you stronger than before? She told me about the night her husband died, her voice lowering with reverence for the memory. "I had 4 kids to feed and not a penny in my pocket," she said. It was pouring rain outside, the kind that makes the night feel colder and lonelier than it already is. All I had was a thin blanket wrapped around my shoulders and a Bible clutched to my chest. She didn't share that to sound tough or heroic. She told it because in that moment she discovered a secret most people never learn. God's peace isn't found in the absence of trouble. It's found right in the middle of it, when the storm is fiercest and hope feels farthest. We're raising young men today to avoid discomfort, to run from pain, to believe they're entitled to a life free of hardship. But life doesn't work that way. That's not real. That's fantasy. You want to be a man of substance? Then you need a backbone forged in the fires of adversity, not the soft cushions of ease. You need faith that's been tested by nights on your knees, not just words taught in a classroom or memorized from a book. Anybody can sing praises when the bank account is full, when the career is on track, when the kids are healthy and everything feels secure. But the man who lifts his hands in worship after losing everything, the one who still says, "God is good," when life feels anything but good, now that's a man with roots deep enough to withstand any storm. That's a man who's unshakable because his faith wasn't built on circumstances but on the character of God Himself. Because when hardship comes, and it always will, it doesn't just test your life, it exposes it. Trials pull back the curtain and reveal what's been growing underground in your soul. If you've spent your years planting seeds of ego, pride, and self-sufficiency, then when the winds blow, you'll topple like a house of cards. But if you've nurtured seeds of truth, humility, and faith, you may bend, but you won't break. Your roots will hold. Your character will stand. As her words about storms and roots still echoed in my heart, she leaned in closer, eyes worn by time but shining with unwavering conviction. And she spoke with a quiet power that filled the room. She looked at me with the kind of eyes that have cried 1,000 tears and whispered, "Pain can either be your prison or your platform. It's your choice, son." Her voice trembled with the weight of a lifetime. Let it teach you, let it shape you, let it drive you to your knees. Don't waste your suffering. Don't waste your tears. Let God use it. And then she paused, as if waiting for the truth to sink into my bones. So when the hard times come, and they will mark my words, don't be surprised. Don't feel like God is punishing you. Don't lose your mind asking, "Why me?" until you're blind with frustration. Instead, ask, "What now?" Ask yourself, what is this storm revealing in me? What is God trying to grow in my heart through this rain? Because a wise man, she said, doesn't just survive the storm. He learns from it. He comes out the other side stronger, softer, wiser, more compassionate, and closer to heaven than he ever was before. Few men understand that pressure itself isn't the problem. It's the proving ground of every man's character. But the rare few who do grasp this don't just endure life, they inspire it. They don't just survive adversity. They become beacons of hope to everyone around them. She said it slowly, with a tone so calm it demanded your attention without ever asking for it. I've buried men who had everything she said, her voice low but certain. Homes so big their kids could get lost in them. Cars that cost more than I earned in a decade. Closets lined with tailored suits, and shelves packed with trophies collecting dust. She shook her head gently. But you know what? Not one of those men had peace. Then she fixed me with a look so piercing it felt like it cut right through my chest. This world will sell you a dream son. It'll tell you success is measured in numbers. Followers, bank accounts, square footage, power. That more always means better. But let me tell you something true. Some of the most broken, hollow men in history had the fattest wallets and the biggest stages. She paused, letting the words land. They were rich on the outside, but completely bankrupt in their souls. She continued, her voice gaining a quiet urgency. We're raising a generation of men who know how to make a living, but don't have the slightest clue how to actually live. They chase status, like it's oxygen, desperate for the next promotion, the next compliment, and they end up gasping for purpose. They trade their time for money, their integrity for applause, their families for a fleeting reputation. Then she painted a picture so vivid I could see it in my mind's eye. And when the lights finally go out, when the crowds go home, when the deals are done, and the noise stops, they're left standing in the dark with themselves. And many don't even know who that man is anymore. They've worn masks for so long they forgot what their own soul looks like. She sighed, the kind of deep, weary sigh only the wise can offer. The devil doesn't always come to destroy a man outright. Sometimes all he needs to do is distract him. Just keep him busy enough chasing things that don't last, and he'll never stop long enough to find what really matters. Her words felt like both a warning and a lifeline. And isn't that exactly what we see all around us today? Men distracted by the empty chase, chasing success, chasing lust, chasing comparison, while their children grow up quietly without the father they long for. Men so caught up in their careers that their wives lie awake at night, wondering if they're still loved. Men pursuing pleasures and possessions, while their marriages slowly starve for tenderness and time. And when it all starts to crumble, when their empire of sand begins to wash away, they cry out, "How did I get here?" But she looked me square in the eye and answered the question most men never dare ask. They gained the world, but somewhere along the way they lost themselves. She held up her worn hands, as if holding the memories of lives both built and broken. "And listen to me," she said firmly. "I'm not saying money is evil. I'm not saying dreams are wrong. I'm saying the moment you put them on the throne of your heart, the moment they become your identity, the moment your worth depends on what you have, instead of who you are, that's the moment the rot begins." As she finished speaking of the dangers of chasing empty success, the room seemed to grow quiet, like even the walls were listening. Her words lingered in the air, reminding me that the greatest danger isn't failure. It's succeeding at things that don't truly matter. She leaned in, close eyes, soft but fierce, and said, "You can't fill a starving soul with stuff. You can't buy joy off a shelf. You can't download peace into your heart." She paused, letting the silence press the truth deeper. Some things, she said, are only found in quiet moments, in surrender, in sacrifice. Some things only grow when you slow down long enough to water them. Then she reached out with a hand worn by decades of work and love, and whispered words that felt like they were etched on my heart. "Live simple, give much love, deep laugh, often, and don't you dare die with your heart full of regrets, and your house full of things." That kind of wisdom, she said, might sound old-fashioned to a world obsessed with the latest and loudest, but it's the kind of wisdom that keeps a man standing tall when storms come. And storms always come. Some of you, she warned, are chasing a life that's quietly stealing the very things that make life worth living. Your schedule is bursting, but your soul is starving. Your calendar is booked solid, but your spirit is bone dry. She leaned back, eyes misty with memories, and said, I've seen men spend their days piling up trophies and titles convinced it would fill them, only to find they were lonelier than ever. And then she spoke words that cut like a blade of truth. No U-Haul follows a hearse. You're not taking your car, your house, your bank account with you. But you can leave something behind, something money can't buy: a legacy, a name that means something, a marriage worth remembering. Children who grow up strong because they were nurtured by your kindness. Friends who remember your loyalty and your laughter. A quiet, steady life full of purpose and love. Few men understand the real cost of chasing the world until they've already paid it with broken relationships, restless nights, and a hollow heart. But the men who wake up before it's too late, who look around and whisper, there has to be more, they find it. They find peace, they find purpose, and many of them find God. She looked at me, eyes cloudy with time, but voice clear as morning, and asked a question that still echoes inside me. When you leave this earth, what will people remember? She leaned back and said softly, your name will be spoken long after you're gone. But how it's spoken, with tears of gratitude or with silence, is up to you. A man's legacy isn't forged in the bright moments of applause. It's shaped in the quiet shadows, in the late-night prayers, in the honest apologies, in the sacrifices nobody sees, in the faithfulness nobody claps for. It's not the speeches he gives, but the lives he touches. Not the positions he holds, but the promises he keeps. The world will always celebrate what's loud, flashy, and instant. But God watches what's quiet, faithful, and true. Whether you know it or not, you're planting seeds every day. Seeds of courage or seeds of fear. Seeds of love or seeds of bitterness. And long after you're gone, those seeds will grow into trees that shape your children, your marriage, your friends, and even your community. That is legacy. And don't think it happens in one grand moment. No, legacy is built in the everyday, in showing up over and over again. She told me stories of her husband, how he wasn't rich in money, but he was rich in all the ways that mattered. He never missed church, never missed dinner, and never let a day pass without telling her he loved her. Decades later, his love still echoed in her voice, as if he were right there beside her. You see, she said, eyes glistening, the question isn't if you'll be remembered. You will be. The real question is, for what will you be remembered as? The man who never forgave, who chased success, but missed the wonder in his children's eyes, who was respected in public but feared in private? Or will they remember you as the man who loved, fiercely served humbly, gave generously, and stood tall even when no one was watching? Then, in a voice both tender and unyielding, she said, words I'll never forget. Don't just aim to be a great man in your time. Aim to be a good man for all time. And that starts right now with the choices you make today, the forgiveness you offer today, the love you give today. Because one day, someone will stand over your grave, and their tears or their silence will speak louder than any trophy ever could. Remember, we're not promised tomorrow. We're not guaranteed another breath. So live today with eternity in mind. Hold your loved ones tighter. Speak words of love while you still have a voice. Do what's right even when it costs you. Ask for forgiveness and give it freely. Walk in integrity. Pray for your family even when they'll never know you did. And above all, leave behind something worth remembering. Not just money, not just a name, but a trail of faith. A legacy of kindness, a life of love so strong that even generations who never meet you will know you by the light you left behind. Because your life is a letter written day by day, and one day someone else will read it. Few men think of the end while they still feel strong, but the wise ones do. They live each day in light of forever. And because of that, their lives don't just count, they shine. And when they're gone, the world doesn't just lose a man. It remembers a light that once burned bright, that my friend is a life well lived.